Okay, Sean, so we've previously talked about being buried alive. You remember the Barbara Mackle story right here outside of Atlanta?
Yeah, and this is the real Buried Alive, not the Mr. Beast version,
Not the
right?
Mr. Beast version. If you remember, Barbara Mackle was a student at Emory. She was kidnapped at a motel kind of in the periphery of Atlanta and was put in this shallow grave for something like 3 or 4 days
Yeah.
and lived to tell about it. They found her after they got the people that had done it. And so that's come up a couple times in previous episodes, but something else happened within the
Oh,
last
always in your episodes, I might add.
always in my episodes. I have a lane, right?
Again, this is the search history on your
Yeah.
browser. um,
All right. So this week, just within the last week or so, was reported in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and then every local media outlet picked up on it. It's the story of a woman named Lucy Mae Johnson who passed away in 2023 at the ripe old age of 95. She was a great grandmother to 7 kids, and one of her granddaughters, Marva Lynch, living in Maryland, ended up coordinating the funeral plans with a local funeral home. She sent clothes and even a wig for Miss Johnson to be, prepare for her funeral. It's traumatic, and it's what she did to prepare for that somber and certainly important day. So, like I said, just last week, the AJC reported that Lynch believed that the person in the casket was not, in fact, her grandmother. Now, the day of the funeral, she had only had a passing glance in the casket. Obviously, that's a tough thing to be able to look in the casket, and, not everyone wants to do that, right?
yep, 95-year-old woman. All right.
That's eh, honestly, that's kind of it, right? You
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
some
your
people
mind's in a million other places, but
yeah,
if it's someone who looks similar.
that's right. And so some people can't even walk up there with a closed casket, right? Like it's a difficult thing. And so her attorney, because attorneys are involved here, said she briefly glanced at the casket, didn't look closely. Her grandmother's wig and clothing were visible, and she assumed it was the right body. Um, okay. So you know where I'm going with this, of course.
Yeah.
So during the service, a funeral director informed Marva Lynch, the granddaughter, that the body in the casket was not, in fact, her grandmother. Instead, an unknowing individual had been dressed in Miss Johnson's supported attire and wig and was presented to the grieving family and friends. This unthinkable error meant that Miss Johnson was missing from her own funeral, as her family's attorney later stated.
I saw a headline about this, but I didn't read into it, so I don't know anything other about this story other than the fact that it happened and it was something recent. But God, can you even imagine?
No.
And look, for the people who messed up, however it got messed up, you're the funeral home director or whatever. Can you just imagine like the egg on your face?
I was gonna say they were mortified, but that would be too on the nose,
That
right?
would be on the nose, yeah. But oh man.
It makes me wonder, what do they do to keep track of bodies? Like I know in a morgue, right, you've got tags on the toe or some other identification, but like maybe this isn't a big issue because they're not dealing with hundreds of bodies, of course, right? But like, how do you keep track of who's who?
Well, yeah, and you've got to think like this is a business, right? The mortuary
Yeah.
business, it's a big business, you know what I mean? And I don't think I've ever known anybody personally in that business, but I mean, I've certainly talked to people, but it is, you do this every day, and it's not, you try to care and have compassion and all
Yeah.
that stuff, of course. But at the end of the day, like, if you've ever, uh, I think I was at a funeral one time where there was another funeral scheduled that day later and it was kind of like they had to, people are grieving and they had to like usher you out, or there was a viewing and there was a funeral later. There's something like that.
It's still a little awkward, right?
It's
When you've got like
awkward, but
multiple parties and
yeah.
multiple stages of like where they are in in their day, for
Yeah.
example.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you don't realize sometimes that like this place you're going to for, you know, it's still in some ways a business, and so in many ways a business. But
Yeah, even the open casket thing for me it's kind of surprising that we have that at services like this. Like I don't know. Like you'll do the visitation before. It's tough, right? Like I've
yeah,
lost some people,
sure.
and to see them in death is I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't. It's that final. You won't get another chance, and I think you have the option not to go up to the casket or whatever. But yeah, I don't think I have a problem with it. To me, any funeral I've been to, it doesn't. It obviously looks like the person,
Yeah.
but they do the makeup and they do these things based off photographs that the family provides, and you can obviously tell, of course. So for me, there's a little disconnect of like it's almost a resemblance of this person.
Right.
To me, it doesn't feel like I'm looking at my grandfather or
It's a way to
grandmother, for
close.
example.
It's a
Yeah.
closure thing too. Well, it's
Yeah.
also a important reminder because we cover so many cases where people have died, they've been murdered, there's been a tragedy, that in the cases where they have the bodies of someone that's been murdered recovered, that each one of those people actually goes through a funeral. That this is part of that process too. Like I think sometimes we forget some of that part of
Sure.
the story, of the true crime story, is that there are families grieving on site, maybe not looking at a casket of a big tragedy,
Yeah.
and this was just a reminder to me in a weird way about that. So, um, getting back to the story, um, the attorney representing, the family, Jonathan Johnson, said on Fox 5 Atlanta this week, quote, "To their credit, the funeral home admitted this. They pulled her aside and said we need to take the corpse back and swap the bodies before we actually put the body in the ground because we
One
have the wrong body."
one would think that would be a
S
priority.
Reminder, this is actually happening between the moment, this the being at the funeral parlor, if you will,
Yeah.
and having a viewing, open casket, then closed casket, and then burying the 95-year-old grandmother in the ground.
Well, look, and
That's wild.
yeah, and you say to the credit of the mortuary, was it?
Yeah,
Or the funeral home,
yeah.
after look, and this is in Georgia, after you guys because this happened recently. I mean, the news didn't break, and the story didn't recirculate, but
It happened in 2023, in the
okay.
summer of 2023, and the lawsuit came and was reported on May 1st, which is, again, like
S
a week ago or so
okay,
by the AJC.
so my point was, yeah, that was after 3, excuse me, not 3, Noble came out.
Right.
So, yeah, funeral homes are gonna be like, "Yep, yep, 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 yep. We want no part of any."
This is
Um,
true. This is true.
yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so according to reports, the Donald Trimble Mortuary acknowledged the egregious mistake to the family during the funeral service itself, like I mentioned. The funeral home's staff reportedly indicated that the bodies would be swapped into their correct caskets before the actual burial took place. This last minute correction, however, did little to mitigate the distress and shock experienced by Miss Johnson's loved ones, as you can imagine.
Sure.
So, in response to the incident, Marva Lynch, on behalf of the family, has filed a lawsuit against the Donald Trimble Mortuary. The lawsuit, filed in DeKalb County State Court, seeks unspecified punitive damages, including the $8,886.04 paid to for the funeral services and compensation for the profound emotional distress inflicted upon the family.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? Well, a law I mean, I get the like, to me, for sure, the funeral costs should be waived. I mean, that you get that money back. Anything associated with that. As far as anything else, I mean, do you think that's
Yeah,
how's it gonna help?
I agree with you on getting compensated for the cost that the funeral home charged the family for this. It's kind of
That's a
like
given.
it's a make good, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
And
given.
and actually seeing some of the comments from the mortuary, they feel really bad about it.
I
They
believe
know
it,
that
yeah.
they know they made a mistake, and it wasn't intentional, there wasn't a noble type
Sure.
plot line,
Yeah.
and I just think they feel terrible about it. I'd like to give them, you know, a little bit of credit on this. Um, hopefully I just hopefully they settle.
They owned up to it.
Yeah.
They're doing their best to make good on what they need to do. I would bet that they have no issue going, "Hey, we're giving you your money back for the funeral and anything
Yeah.
associated with that." Like, and I bet they probably, and I don't know this, but I bet they probably, if they're really feeling bad, truly, um, they probably went the extra mile to do whatever they could to comfort the family and stuff. So, it's like to
And by the
sue
way,
to
they
s
didn't try to cover it up, like, they
sure,
said they realized, again, between those moments in this experience, they realized that something was wrong, and they said it right there, like, they didn't try
yeah,
to cover it up, and they could have not told anyone,
fair,
right? And so, what we don't know, or I haven't been able to find out, is what was the result, what was told to the other family about this
right.
too, and so there's other implications that we don't yet know about that could come out later on.
It's definitely something you don't want to have happen. You're already in just in a fragile emotional state at a funeral and dealing with that, the whole putting the funeral together and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and but
But is that like $1,000,000 settlement, or is it like
I wouldn't
I don't think it
imagine.
is.
No, I wouldn't imagine. But for me, it's kind of like, what you didn't, what price do you put on that? You know what I mean? Like, how do you put a dollar amount on an experience like that? It's, oh,
A
okay, 75 grand. Yeah, I feel better about this now. Would it, 250 grand? Yeah,
and
that's better.
and remember, just like Noble, Georgia, remember they were already dead when a lot of these things happened. That was terrible, of course, but things to think about.